For more on the statement by the National Legacy Foundation's withdrawing from the structures of the preparatory task team of the National Dialogue is CEO of the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation, Janet Jobson. Good afternoon, Janet. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. You know, when reading that statement on Friday, one was not entirely sure whether this is a complete dissociation with the National Dialogue, because it says you're withdrawing from the preparatory structures for the upcoming convention this weekend. Please just take us through the exact position of the Legacy Foundations.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important thing to clarify. We fundamentally believe in the idea of the National Dialogue and in its potential to be an opportunity for all South Africans to reshape our country and to reshape it in truly transformative ways. And it's because of our commitment to the National Dialogue that we've had to pull out of the preparatory task team and the National Convention, because our feeling was that it was violating the central principles that we'd laid out with civil society at the very beginning of the journey. Principles of it being citizen-led. We found significant action taken by government that we felt was undermining citizen leadership, that it has to be meaningful, there has to be real dialogue, not just public consultation, that it needs to be fully inclusive of all South Africans, and ultimately that it needs to be completely transparent and accountable. And it was these principles that we're really defending by saying we can't endorse the National Convention as it stands.
Now, Janet, we cannot run away from the fact that as Legacy Foundations, you probably were lending that level of credibility and legitimacy to the whole process being citizen-led. So I think it's probably important to find out, when you say that government was attempting to almost usurp the power of the citizens through the various organizations, civil society and the Legacy Foundations, that perhaps you give us clear examples as to in what way were they almost seeking to erode that whole expression of citizen-led?
I mean, I think the clearest example is that the decision was made to go ahead on the 15th of August by government officials against the advice of the foundations and the chairs of the subcommittees. But even before that, you know, we had argued from the very outset that one of the principles should be that NEDLAC should be hosting the Secretariat of the National Dialogue, specifically because they're in a position where they have interests and constituencies from Labour, from business, from civil society. And essentially what we saw was that there was an absolute lack of resourcing. It took a full month from the announcement of the date to the point at which the Minister of Employment and Labour sent a letter giving NEDLAC the mandate, and funds were only transferred to NEDLAC on the 5th of August. So what that meant was that the operational capacity just didn't exist inside NEDLAC, and so we were reliant on other parts of government, such as the presidency, to add their input, and that really led to a shift in where the accountability lay. And you know, for instance, we did not receive to our required assurance a sense of what money was being allocated, where it was coming from, exactly how much was being paid for things, and exactly how they were being procured. We felt that we should, as the accountability partners, really know every detail, and unfortunately we didn't get to that point.
Now, given these issues that you lay out now, these are obviously of concern, because if you're not fully kept abreast of the monies that are being spent, come the end of the whole National Dialogue, you will, along with government, be held accountable that money perhaps was not spent prudently. So what becomes the position now? Are you just only withdrawing from the preparatory task team? You will not be part of the event coming, or the convention this coming weekend, but you will continue with the dialogue. But you don't have at least the data around the funds that have been spent thus far. So do you still want to associate with it?
So we are going to be regrouping and coming together again over the next few days and next week, both as the foundations and with the civil society partners that we originally started this journey with, to really figure out what is the role that we can play, because we believe in the idea of the National Dialogue, and we really want it to succeed. We felt we could not lend our names to endorsing a convention that we felt was premature and rushed. You know, we should be able, from the convention as a launch pad, we should be going straight into community dialogues. And frankly, the planning and the budgeting has not been concluded in order to do that. That's why we asked for a postponement, so that this could really excite South Africans and could really be a process we can all buy into. We are committed to the idea of the national dialogue. We're committed to the principles that it was founded on. And our work and what we are figuring out how to do next is how to contribute in a way that ensures that we move back to those principles as this process continues.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had also spoken of, in that statement last week, you had spoken of a loss of meaningful platforms for dialogue. At least what you were now seeing on paper that was to unfold was that this essentially was going to threaten to have it looking more like a social compacting event, which you guys were not wanting it to become. Just share with us how it was envisaged you were going to go into these communities and engage them, because you said you wanted every ordinary citizen, from a nurse to an unemployed person to a teenager, to actually be part of contributing to the trajectory that we must take as South Africa going forward.
Absolutely. And one of the central ways we envisaged the national dialogue rolling out was through 13,500 local dialogues taking place across all of the wards of South Africa, 3 dialogues per ward, and 5 sectoral dialogues per district that really allow all of the various parties, whether it's business and labor, in a particular place to come together. Now, our feeling is that a process that, for that to be meaningful, we could reach all of those people. We're thinking probably about 1.5 million people in face-to-face engagement. We could probably get them in the room, but the question is what happens when they're in the room? And that's where we felt we need a really, really effective and exceptional methodology. We need strong facilitation, so we need to train facilitators incredibly well to carry out these dialogues. And then we need to ensure that there is a mechanism for the outcomes of these dialogues to be fed back into a national process.
And hopefully
one of the
be
things we also
implementable.
hoped would launch. Sorry.
And hopefully be implementable, because some were of the view that perhaps the outcomes would not be implementable, but really citizens want to ensure that whatever they've collectively decided on is reflected then in government through implementation. But I just want to take you back to this figure of 13,500 dialogues. Most certainly that would cost a lot of money. As you say that the funds were not forthcoming, but naturally we have been told of the fiscal constraints that we're now all dealing with. So I suppose maybe in as much as we don't hold the brief for government here, but many were saying the dialogue is needed right now. There are many pressing issues around security, the level of corruption. So was this not government saying, let us do something nevertheless and have citizens voice out some of their concerns now, even though it would be a piecemeal effort? You still believe that it should be postponed, even if it's next year or in 2 years' time, when they have the funds for 13,500 dialogues?
So the fundamental issue is not the funds, and we've called specifically for the dialogue just to be moved out by a couple of months, to be moved to the end of October, so that all of the preparations can be put in place, so that NEDLAC can hire a team, so that there can be proper staffing, there can be proper resourcing and proper planning of the whole process. We would not want to see a long delay in the national dialogue, and one of our fears is that there will be a convention this weekend and then an absolute lull in activity for months on end, as the planning still has to happen for the rollout of the real dialogue. So we really believe that the opportunity we have is to delay this convention by a few months in order also to excite the nation, to really be able to put in place the channels for citizens to engage, to get out. You know, we've been working on an idea of 30,000 South Africans being supported to run local citizen-led dialogues in their book clubs, in their community policing forums, in their interest groups. All of those need really clear planning, and that planning has been in process, but it was not at the point where it was ready to launch, and that's been our point. We think you should launch effectively at the end of October and really roll out a process that is credible and that the citizens of South Africa can own. The only reason to do it on the 15th of August was because that was the date the president said, and we felt that wasn't a good enough reason to keep going at a point at which it would not be of the quality that we had aspired to.
Janet, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That is CEO of the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation, Janet Jobson, there speaking to us following that statement that they, among other foundations, released last week, pulling out of the preparatory task team of the National Dialogue.